money to pass up.
You know what I wanted to touch upon as well, speaking about Olympia, Kai Greene. So
Right. There was something about Kai Greene you wanted to
yeah,
talk.
recently on Generation Iron, which they always have, they like Kai Greene's really dedicated to them, and Victor Martinez. They were talking, the discussion was why Nick Walker plays sixth at the 2020. But, in his philosophical way of speaking, Kai Greene is not so easy to listen to sometimes.
He's
But the subject turned to different winners in the modern era, like Jake Woods' era. Okay. And basically, he was saying, um, before it's like, this is what Kai Greene is saying. In Joe Weider's time, and maybe the guys that took over the Olympia after him, AMI, it was like Joe Weider didn't want his winner to lose. You know what I mean? So there was, I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win eight Olympias or seven or six, you know what I mean? So,
right.
but it was very difficult, almost impossible to beat the Mr. Olympia. Like they wanted, it's Kai is saying, I'll play his thing now, that it was like Joe Weider wanted you to push the Mr. Olympia winner, maybe even look like you're going to beat him, but then when the story ends, his champion still wins, because like for Joe Weider, the Mr. Olympia winner meant a lot of things, magazine covers, promoting his brand, his supplements. So lots of things could politics, like lots of things. It's not he is the owner, so it's like there was like a type of control on the sport according to Kai Greene. He's calling it the old destiny and the new destiny. So it's like
Right.
now you're not guaranteed a win. Not even next year, with all the criticism that what's his name got, Derek, he's not a favorite to win next year. The Mr. Olympia winner is not a favorite anymore to win the next year. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
but I mean, but the truth of the matter is, we'll let Kai say his piece so we could
Yeah.
hear it, but like the guys now are not as dominant as they
No,
were
that's the
back in
thing.
Weider's
So
days. I mean, Lee Haney deserved to win all those
yes,
Olympias. Nobody
yes,
beat him.
yes,
Dorian Yates could be a little iffy on a couple, but
yeah,
he was more dominant. Jay Cutler, he lost to Dexter, but the guys were more, Ronnie, they're more dominant.
yeah. But
We don't have that now.
yeah. That's the thing. That's me. I cannot say Derek is a favorite for next year.
No.
I mean, some say Hadi should have won. Some say Derek should have won. Some say that Andrew Jack should have won. So um, let's listen to see. Let's see what Kai's going to say. Um,
Yeah, let's hear it out of his mouth.
yeah. Let's see what this is the first time he said something I understood, practically understood. So,
First of all, let me just say this as a fan of the sport, past and present, there is certainly winds of change that are just there. It's 30 years ago that didn't happen at the Olympia. I think the dynasty era of the sport,
Yeah.
kind of existed in the old model that was the old kingdom. I think Joe Weider. I think when Joe Weider originally designed the Olympia, his idea of what Mr. Olympia was supposed to be was the ability to be challenged, greatly by athletes and champions from everywhere that were more than worthy. And they were supposed to push the champion. But at the end of the day, for Weider, I believe, I'm not biblical scripture here, but that said, I think the idea, as I understood it, Joe Weider wanted Mr. Olympia. His Mr. Olympia, though he was challenged to face these obstacles, at the end, his champion was supposed to, prevail. You know what I mean? Mr. Olympia, in the past, by the standard of the old idea, was supposed to be challenged, pushed, but not overcome.
see that?
And certainly not overcome very easily. So, and that's maybe just maybe my opinion. I'm sure there are people out there that might have another, but I tell you what, there's a new time in the sport. And it looks like, to me, from what I can see, the idea of this dynasty that lives for forever, forever and ever, amen, just because it is allowed to be challenged. It looks like they're not just settling on a dynasty. Like the dynasty era is gone. It looks like they're very clear about, allowing for Mr. Olympia to come in there without an unfair advantage, and he's going to have to, fight and be judged on his merits. I think that
Which is good, right?
I think it's great. Shout out to Samson Doe because I think he did an amazing job. That in itself is I think has to be a very difficult challenge to prepare for. Being the top man in the sport, everyone's gunning for you.
Yeah.
Everyone was gunning for him, and I think I can only imagine just how interesting his process of prep had to be while preparing for this Olympia, and how different it must have been in comparison to maybe past Olympias that he had to prepare for. Psychologically, I think you really do have to have an amazing edge.
Anyways, he's gonna keep talking about it.
And then you also said somewhere in that interview, he mentioned that he thinks that today, if he looked like, if he was competing
I
today, he
think
would
he
win one.
I watched it, but he's giving the gist that if his era was now, he could have beat Phil Heath at least once. You know what I mean? So there were times he was beating him on the Saturday. You know, he was, when he was at his top.
There was one year, I think it was 2014, that I
Yeah,
gave him the A.
yeah,
But
yeah. But it's it's one of the first times that he's talking not with all these, philosophical.
yeah, man, that was the clearest
Yeah,
I've ever heard Kai
yeah.
express
And
himself.
and and saying the dynasty thing, like I found it very interesting for him to call it out. It's like Joe Weider had his champion. You were allowed to challenge him, but he didn't want him to lose. It's like when you see the outtakes of Pumping Iron. There's Arnold sitting with Joe Weider at his office, saying, Arnold is saying, I think I'm going to retire and all that. No, no, no. There's this freak from New York, from the Bronx. He's moving up. He's a big boy. He's going to challenge you for the title, Lou Ferrigno, and all this stuff. And it's like, Arnold says, if he gets bigger, I'm going to get bigger. You know what I mean? And all this stuff. So it's like a script, you know, and, uh, and to beat it, it was almost impossible to beat the Mr. Olympia. Then it started, to taper down with Jay Cutler beating Ronnie Coleman when he was finished, and Cutler losing to Dexter, then winning it back. And that started to open the doors for things like the Mr. Olympia is a weak person as well. He's human, and now, how has it been? Brand um uh Phil Heath, right? 7. Sean Roden, Brandon Curry, Big Ramy twice, uh, Holly
Hottie,
Chupan,
Hottie.
Hardy, uh,
And there was
um,
Derek,
Derek,
Samson, Derek.
Samson, Derek. No, okay, it's being switched between 3 or 4 guys, but nobody's dominant. Nobody's dominant.
Well,
So
that's the question. Is what Kai's saying accurate in that he's almost making it sound more like it was Joe Weider's doing
yeah,
that
yeah. Shit.
it was dying. Did they deserve to win that many titles in a row? And I would kind of disagree with Kai personally, that I think that the reason why there were dynasties was simply because there was that one dominant guy. you
Yeah,
know, Lee Haney deserved to win 8 in a row. I'm sorry. I mean, then he retired. Dorian took over and won what, six in a row or something.
yeah, that's
Um, and even though wasn't maybe, there was a year where maybe Sean Ray could have, but Sean might have been too small and they wanted
yeah,
just that big guy. So he was still dominant.
yeah,
I would have given Nasser the win in '97, I think it was. But but Dorian was still a freak of nature, and then you had Ronnie come in, and he was a freak of nature, and only
yeah,
really, I mean, even Jay will admit that Jay beat
yeah,
Ronnie when Ronnie was on his down phase, not
yeah,
when he
yeah,
was at his best.
yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah,
you know, so is it really that Joe Weider was kind of like making the guys hold it, or
yeah,
is it just simply the sport?
yeah,
Because if you look at the guys today, nobody's dominant.
yeah.
It's
No,
not a
no,
dominant
no.
thing. It's
And
not the same thing. There's not that one freak.
and the thing is as well, there's no more magazines. So like if you have a golden boy, I don't know, Barry DeMay, he placed third at the Olympia. He was on his project, he was going up, but then he had that pec there, So, when there's lots of things can help a result at them. Is like if there was the magazine, this guy's a poster boy, so he can sell magazines. He's for example, Jay Cutler. He has the blonde hair, the kid from I don't know, California, whatever, and um, it lots of small things can attribute to judges picking a certain athlete, but let's putting that aside, 80, let's say 90% of the winners deserve to win. I mean 95. There were some iffy calls in the past, um till last year. This year people thought that Hadi Chupan got screwed as well, So Milo says that Hadi should have had at least 4 titles in his hand by now. But it's what people see. I don't know what the judges see, what they want to see. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just over my overall look at it is like, and listen, I love Kai Greene. He's
No.
probably one of the most interesting people I've ever had a
Yeah.
conversation with.
Yeah.
But I just don't think he's looking at it correctly. I don't think that Joe Weider was like being like, okay, you're going to hold on to the champion, and he's got to stay the
Yeah.
champion.
Yeah.
The way Joe Weider spoke, and
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to beat him. I don't think
Yeah.
that was what was going on. I just think we just had these really, really dominant
Yeah.
champions back then, and now. I
Yeah.
mean, look, Samson looked great one year, then didn't really look great the
Yeah.
next year. You
He
had,
lost. Yeah.
Derek's condition has switched, Nick's condition has switched.
Yeah.
Like nobody's really just
No.
come out and just gotten better every
Yeah.
year and like dominate. There's not that it just doesn't exist right now. There's
No.
not
No.
maybe there will be again one of these days.
One
Somebody
of
will
these
come
days.
along that will be
Yeah.
another Ronnie Coleman freak,
Yeah. Yeah. It could
but
be.
right now it doesn't exist. I
No.
think I also think that what's affected the sport also is that now that classic bodybuilding
Yeah.
physique
Yeah.
has come, a lot of the genetic superiors are in classic.
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
not seeing as many of them go to bodybuilding.
Yeah. It's
So you're
and two on
also kind
two
of diluting the pool
and 2-on-2 as well.
and 2-on-2 as well.
So
You're diluting
yeah.
the
So
talent.
so it's
So
like the
different.
open classes become like not freaks, but it's like it's become more for the freaks because look like a guy like Reagan Grimes, he doesn't even make the cut in the open class. All right, he might have been off by a bit, but that physique, the way he looked, should be in the past it would have moved up more. But the smaller, chunkier, bigger bodybuilder seems to be winning today. They're not worrying about who's taller. So usually the bigger, taller bodybuilder wins, even if he's at 90%. But it's not happening. You know,
Yeah.
it's
I
not
mean,
happening to
I
the
mean, look
point
about
where to the
no, go
point
ahead.
where
You
Lee
finish
Haney
first.
is saying, sorry, Eric,
No, you go first.
to the point where Lee Haney is saying that there should be two different classes again, for the Mr. Olympia, the tall and short class, so um uh the judging criteria, either it's changing or I don't know. It's
Listen, I mean, Lee Haney in his years was one. Yeah, there was a couple of people who, like Gary Stridham was a
yeah,
taller guy and Barry was tall,
yeah,
but there was nobody out there who was 240 to 250
yeah,
pounds
true.
with a 29-inch waist. I mean, Lee
and
Haney just was a freak of nature.
yeah,
Then
and that
Dorian
back,
came along,
yeah,
and his conditioning was just absolutely insane. And he was huge, and
yeah,
now 255, 260, 265 on stage.
yeah,
And then I mean I wouldn't say Jay was as dominant because he did lose to Dexter, but then came back and won again. And then after that wasn't dominant anymore. But and then you had Ronnie, who many believe is the best bodybuilder to ever walk on a stage. So to beat him was almost nearly impossible until Ronnie wasn't good. But you don't have that anymore. You don't have those
Yeah,
complete freaks of nature.
yeah,
Um, and I think that that's what's going on. So I kind of disagree with where Kai is headed on that one. But still an interesting thing to hear him talk about. I
yeah.
mean,
No, no, I think it's a good discussion, and I'm surprised that nobody caught on to it, because Generation Iron, they're pumping out some good interviews. They've been around for a while, and it was a good snippet that I heard this week.
one more thing I'd like to hear Kai say is, "I'm throwing my hat into the ring to the next Masters Olympia." That's what I want to hear Kai say.
Yeah, he hasn't taken a shot.
But when the